Hi guys, it's Kirsty. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about some compulsions that we may find ourselves doing on social media if we are suffering with relationship OCD. And when I'm going to be talking about relationship OCD in this video, I'm going to be talking about relationship OCD that may be projecting itself on a number of different relationships, not just your romantic relationships. So these compulsions might take place if you're suffering from relationship OCD about a friend or a family member, for example. But before I go into that, I'd like to ask, please do subscribe by clicking on the subscribe button below in order to stay up to date with new videos as they're released. So we've got a few videos on this channel about relationship OCD and some of the fears involved in relationship OCD. So if you want to learn more about, some of the fears that might be fueling obsessions surrounding various relationships in our life, particularly romantic relationships, it might be worth checking out those videos. We do have a specific playlist for that. So, as I said in this video, I'm going to be referring to relationship OCD as a whole, not just in relation to romantic partners. So I'm going to be giving some examples of various different relationships in our lives. So, there may be some compulsions that we've done previously in relation to our relationship OCD, such as confessing to somebody the thoughts that we're having, asking for reassurance, constant research, constant Googling about why we don't feel any love towards that particular person, or why do I feel so numb, etc. Testing, kind of being around that person and kind of doing mental feelings checking or replaying situations in our minds where we've been around somebody and trying to test how we've felt. It might be analysing the feelings that we might feel, or it might be avoidance behaviour, so avoiding a certain person who triggers obsessions surrounding our relationship with that person. But in addition to that, we may also have some compulsions that we might not realise that we're doing involving social media. So I want to give some examples of these compulsions and maybe why we might be doing them in this video. So when I'm talking about social media, I'm going to be referring to things like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, maybe TikTok, or even WhatsApp, because as some people may have experienced, WhatsApp could end up being something that could end up being slightly compulsive, and I'll explain why. Perhaps it will be a good idea if I start by talking about that. So with WhatsApp, obviously it gives us an opening to see quite often if somebody has received a message and if they've read a message. So then it can leave us open to checking if it's been a while until they have, we get the double blue tick. So if you're finding yourself having obsessions surrounding a relationship with someone who you're speaking to on WhatsApp, you could find yourself analysing how long it takes to reply to a message or to read a message, for example. And you may even start to experience intrusive thoughts suggesting that if somebody might be ignoring you, and you might start to find yourself almost doing a bit of a kind of stalking activity on WhatsApp, checking regularly to see if you get the double blue tick, and maybe checking the last time that somebody was last on WhatsApp. So, it might be a friend who you're, maybe having some obsessions around your relationship with them, or it might be a partner, or it might be somebody that you're dating or somebody that you'd like to date. But for what, because that relationship perhaps is important to you or could potentially be important to you in your life, you have found yourself having some anxiety surrounding kind of maybe negative thoughts that you've had around it. So you're doing kind of checking. So here, it's kind of the checking of WhatsApp and all of that is like eliminating uncertainty, essentially. It's I need to check because you're feeling uncomfortable. So, simply here, I recommend stop the checking, which is very difficult, but we say often, it's sitting with the discomfort, and that will be a theme as I talk through some of these things throughout this video, because when it comes to kind of these kind of checking rituals that we might be doing on social media or all of that, we can more easily put a stop to those ones than if we're doing kind of mental checking where we don't even realize we've done it until after we've done the compulsion. Whereas if these ones, we can choose to put these behaviors on hold. I mean, we could do some cognitive work to work on our beliefs around, the things we're frightened of to help us along the way. So, not having the ability to see when somebody was last online, that can be taken off WhatsApp, and they won't see when you were last online. You can't see when they're last online. I recommend that. It can be very helpful. But there's other things that you might find yourself doing on social media. So on the checking, let's continue on the subject of checking. So it might be checking to see if you've posted something, checking to see if a certain person has liked it, for example. That can be one thing. So whether that's Instagram or Facebook or whatever, or it could be with somebody, if you're having some kind of obsession surrounding but around maybe some obsessions around jealousy, or even if that's like retroactive jealousy, when you feel kind of jealousy about what might have happened in a partner's past. You might find yourself checking it to see if anybody's commenting or liking a partner or a friend's posts or something on social media. So it's basically, when it's becoming compulsive, because you get the sudden urge and it becomes quite like almost a frantic urge, and you're uncomfortable if you haven't done it. So the key here is, if you find yourself checking these things on social media, if so-and-so's liked something, or if someone's commented on your friend or your partner's video, and it's something that you've found yourself kind of obsessing around, if you're doing this with an urgency to eliminate immediate discomfort, I recommend making the choice to go with the discomfort instead. What you're doing here is choosing short-term discomfort for a long-term goal of getting further along in your OCD recovery. The next thing I want to talk about, in addition to checking in terms of social media, is when you might find yourself looking up certain social media posts deliberately in order to check your reaction to them, or to check feelings to them as well. So, for example, if you're having relationship OCD and you start to have intrusive thoughts about an ex-partner, you might find yourself going back and looking at an ex-partner's social media post to check that you're not still attracted to them or something like that. And of course, if you're afraid of this, and the more you think it's terrible that if you would be attracted to them, and the more you're doing this, the more you might find that you don't like kind of the thoughts or feelings that you get when you do check it, because this is part of what OCD does to keep us in the loop, because it thinks it's keeping us safe. So we keep doing the checking behavior because we've reinforced the idea in our minds that this is necessary to keep us safe. So that might be something that we do. Or it might be that if we're doubting our love for somebody, whether that's our partner, our child, our parent or sibling or friend, we might find ourselves looking at posts or pictures that they have posted, or pictures of them on social media, and doing the checking internally to see if we feel the love. And once again, it's that whole idea of, if you're looking for a feeling, or, you're desperately trying to get that feeling, you might come up short. It's like that we use the idea of, saying, oh, you can't tickle yourself or make yourself jump because it's coming. And it's kind of the same with that as well. So that's why that is counterintuitive. And then there's other things that you might do as well, kind of along the lines of checking, but a bit like it's more of a comparison thing. So you might find yourself looking at other people's social media posts and analysing them, almost like trying to do a comparison. Say, for example, if you are having obsession surrounding your romantic relationship, you might be looking at other people's posts about their romantic relationships and kind of analysing it and thinking, oh, they look so much more in love than me, or or do we look more in love in that picture? And somebody maybe who is having intrusive thoughts or obsessions around like relationship OCD, maybe with their children, might look at mummy blogger posts or something like that, and feeling, doing the comparison and feeding into their OCD by feeling insignificant, like not as good as these other mummies who look so perfectly happy and calm and content with their children. Or it might be, if you're having kind of intrusive thoughts around, friendships, it might be, looking at other people's posts and seeing them laughing with their friends and spending loads of time with their friends, whereas you're struggling to get time with your friends at the moment, maybe for one reason or another. So, it's kind of doing this kind of comparison, analysing thing that only feeds into more kind of rumination and things like that. And what I do want to urge you is to remember, and a lot of people say this, is of course, people show on social media only what they want to show. A picture doesn't tell 1,000 words. It tells what the person in the picture is posing to try to say. So if you're trying to compare your relationship against someone doing a lovey-dovey post online or something, or some kind of blogger who is kind of depicting the perfect mother-child relationship, they're trying to, only show the good. And it might be, quite often with influencers, they're trying to sell something as well. And it's like, it's essentially sometimes trying to sell the idea of this perfect life or this perfect relationship or this perfect group of friends or something, perfect group of Sex and the City friends who amazingly, even way into their 30s and 40s, still manage to get together several times a week, even though several of them have children. It's like they're selling you an idea, and it's not always the most realistic thing. So it can feed into our OCD and our it's our kind of negative thoughts about whatever relationship. It's actually not very helpful. So if we find ourselves comparing things like that, please know that all you're doing is digging yourself deeper, and it's extremely unhelpful. And one of the things we don't want to be doing is deliberately avoiding, say, for example, if these images trigger, we don't want to be suddenly stopping them because the idea of seeing them sets off our anxiety. But we don't want to be deliberately necessarily trying to analyse them and using them to compare. So the way to know here is if you're trying to look at these images on social media to try and get an answer for something, then maybe that you're doing it deliberately, compulsively to try and compare. Whereas if it kind of just crops up and it triggers you, you could choose to just leave that question in your head unanswered. Is my relationship with this person, whether that's my mother-daughter relationship or friendship or parent-child relationship, sibling relationship, romantic relationship, is it falling short of what this one is? And, leave the question in your mind, move on, don't dwell on it, and don't sit there trying to compare. So I hope this video has been kind of useful in terms of talking about some of the ways that social media may feed into our compulsions, whether that's, like I said, constantly going on to check or looking at something to check our feelings, or looking at something and comparing and trying to analyze or something like that. These are all compulsive. And as I said, it's compulsive if it's done to eliminate immediate discomfort. And if you choose not to do it, you feel uncomfortable, then you're probably doing the right thing. But at the same time, it's good to make sure that you're not deliberately avoiding certain things on social media or something while you're browsing, because it might bring up, certain questions related to your obsessions. So you don't need to necessarily dwell on the picture or anything like that. But, also at the same time, if you're actively, deliberately trying to avoid something to make yourself more comfortable, then maybe you might choose to not do that and just let it be. And that in turn ends up kind of feeding into the idea of acceptance. And of course, when we're doing these compulsions, related to relationship, OCD, whatever relationship that is, it might be for several reasons. And like I said, there's other videos talking about some of the main fears that might be involved and certain irrational beliefs that might be involved in relationship OCD. So I would recommend checking them out. But I hope this video has been helpful, and do take care. Bye.